and then we'll engage from that point. Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. Machike. Let me greet first and foremost the chairperson of NHBRC Council, Ms. Noxolo Kifit, who's accompanied by Ms. Temlin Brower, who's the acting CEO, and I think the acting COO is here as well, Mr. Nse. DG of Human Settlement, who will be joining us shortly. We are moving from one engagement to the other, and he will be joining and will be part of our delegation. And good morning to the members of the media. I'm not sure if there are others online, but present here. As indicated, we felt it important jointly with the Council of NHBRC that at the conclusion of the investigation into the collapsed building in George, which happened in 2024, we made this undertaking that subsequently we'll then officially release the report, because we view this as a matter of great concern. 34 lives, as you know, were lost, but also it was in the public interest to have an understanding and understand our system processes and procedures on actually what should have happened, what happened, and how importantly will we avert future and avoid future occurrences of this nature. The 7th administration and their strategic priorities mandates us to build a capable and a developmental state. And it is for this reason, therefore, that we come to brief you, the nation, on the findings of our investigation, because we believe transparency and commitment to addressing the shortcomings within the human settlement sector, which we are overseeing, are important. As you may know, on the 6th of May 2024, we learned, which shocked all of us in the country, that the Neo Victoria project, which was a residential building that was still under construction, had collapsed in George in the Western Cape. The building collapse constituted a historic and a horrific disaster, which remained fresh in the memories of many South Africans. This terrible disaster will live and forever linger in the memories of the survivors, their families, friends, and people who were close by, who had to experience this sad tragedy. It claimed 34 lives, and some of the survivors are still recovering from the devastating days, which has changed their lives permanently. As a caring government, we want to promise the families and friends of the departed workers who got befallen by the tragic incident that fateful day in the hands of negligence, which could have been avoided, that their lives were lost but not in vain. In line with its mandate, therefore, which regulates South Africa's home building industry, the NHBRC correctly so initiated an investigation to understand the factors that led to the collapse of the building. In doing so, this required a service provider to conduct a proper forensic investigation into the reported allegations and to make necessary recommendations on the findings. Accordingly, the investigation led several findings covering the areas of certification, the grading process, enrollment certification process, inspection model, the technical manager appointment, role and certification, including the technical tests, supervision or the value chain of supervision, inspection and structural defects, skills adequacy of non-technical engineering personnel, validity of the certification of internal and external competent persons like architects with professional bodies, municipal building approval process, material quality and structural deficiencies, validity of the geotech report, engineering and soil classification of the site, and obviously adherence to the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So it was a very well brought, encompassing report, which clearly took us almost a year as Human Settlement and NHBRC to conclude. And I will touch and elaborate a little bit on the key areas that I've just mentioned now, which I think are of importance for all of us to understand the findings of the forensic investigation. In relation to home builder certification and the home builder grading process, the investigation into this process revealed significant irregularities in their registration process. The company in question inaccurately presented its capabilities during the registration phase. Amongst other things, it failed to declare its intention to construct a multi-story building. This omission, by its very nature, breached the NHBR policies, which require transparency regarding a home builder intended project scope with regard to the test of the technical capacity as to whether, as an entity or a company, are you able to build. Have you ever built a project of this nature, size bigger or smaller? So by passing this rigorous process, a company in question compromised its registration and certification of the project. With regard to the enrollment certification process, the enrollment process demonstrated significant non-compliance with the NHBRC enrollment procedures, resulting in critical regulatory breaches and unauthorized approvals. For example, the enrollment forms were processed on the 11th July 2023, even though the construction date was scheduled to start for the 19th June or had already started on the 19th June 2023. Again, the officials did not verify that a home builder was registered to construct, despite the building plans showing that this was indeed a multi-story building or a multi-story enrollment. Thus, a contractor was allowed to proceed with the construction of a multi-story building without the proper enrollment process for a multi-story building. Even more disturbing was the unlawful use of other officials' credentials to enroll the first phase of the project. This actually demonstrated the breakdown in NHBRC internal processes. Just to elaborate it a bit further, the process is designed technologically in such a way that each and every person has a code to approve a particular process, and you are supposed to approve it to move to the next. In this instance, one used the credentials of the other to approve and pass the certification process, which we find to be very irregular in terms of subverting our own internal control measures and systems. Let me touch on the inspection model. The inspection model carried out by NHBRC personnel on the project were marked equally by several lapses and failures that significantly compromise the regulatory oversight required for such a large-scale project. This included an official conducting an initial inspection 8 days after the project enrollment has happened. And our standard is a 5-day, so it's a maximum of 5 days. You need to do it on or before the 5-day window period, and this was undertaken on the 8-day period. And this is not in line with our inspection control of NHBRC. More worrying was that the inspection reports included units which were yet to be constructed, which means you inspect in phases in a May, but also this was a holistic one. Let me touch a little bit on site occupational health and safety adherence. The investigation revealed several breaches on our occupational health and safety adherence standard. in relation to construction. This included failure to address safety concerns, resignation of safety consultant, in the absence of OHS provisions in the NHBRC procedures. Futuristically, we believe that the inspection homes procedures lack clear guidelines of addressing OHS violations, leaving inspectors without the mandate to enforce safety compliance on construction site. This is one of our takeaway homes as well from our own systems and procedures on what we need to improve. Competency of artisans and other staff on site. There were gaps in the competency of key personnel. This included unqualified personnel who lacked formal qualifications in engineering or quantity surveying, and they were playing critical roles in areas such as inspection. And if you are not qualified, you really won't even know what to inspect. And that's one of the reasons which led to the problems that subsequently befell the George building. Technical manager competency. The competency of a technical manager was equally found wanting. The investigation revealed significant deficiencies in the oversight and assessment of the manager's qualification, as the latter were not thoroughly reassessed at the time of appointment. You will recall we spoke about the breaches in relation to the enrollment process, which is one of the processes where you have to look closely on who works, on who oversight, and who also deal with the day-to-day monitoring of that. So according to the report, this played a major role in the technical missteps which were observed during construction. Let me talk to geotechnical and engineering assessment deficiencies. The geotechnical report provided did not include crucial information such as trial pit locations, dynamic cone penetrometer, which is called a DCP test, and the geological maps. This information is essential for foundation design and site preparation. The municipal building approval process. The investigation uncovered that the George municipality approved the plans when the construction was already underway. This means the work on site started before approvals were finalized. In summary, the investigation concluded that the collapse of a building was as a result of systemic failures across multiple levels of oversight, non-compliance with regulatory standards, mismanagement by both NHBRC and the project personnel, and these failures included irregular status upliftment, late enrollment, inspection lapses, material quality issues, and safety violations. The report points lightly on the failures of the inspectors and internal control in as far as NHBRC is concerned. So based on these findings, the investigation report made several recommendations to enable NHBRC to improve its processes, thus ensuring enhanced quality assurance, transparency, and enforcement of efficiency, mainly to high-risk projects. This is to avert collapses, loss of lives, but also endangering even people who are working on site. These recommendations include, amongst others, NHBRC registration certificate must state clearly the type of the building a home builder or a builder is registered to construct. Also, NHBRC must establish a dedicated or an ad hoc peer review team to independently review high-risk projects such as multi-story buildings, meaning you can't be a player and a referee at the same time. You approve your process on high complex building. You don't even have someone who says, okay, let me just double check what you have done if it's aligned with the standard of the industry. So we need to conduct comprehensive competency skills audit of inspectors as well and develop thorough due diligence processes to evaluate all information submitted during the verification process. Yes, you can list that this person is qualified, this and that, but a thorough investigation and proof with regard to their qualification and technical expertise needs to be improved. The report went further to recommend that technical managers must be full-time on site during critical stages of construction, that inspection be conducted within 5 days as per our scheduled NHBRC guidelines, and that NHBRC staff must not be allowed to use another staff member login credentials for approval or for verification processes. The outcome of the investigation has also made recommendations that implicated officials to be held accountable for their actions. The charges that will be leveled against them include, amongst others, dereliction of duty, misconduct, negligence, dishonesty, and misrepresentation in official inspection reports. We will continue to monitor that this is done by following due processes. I must add also that there are charges which were referred further for SAPS investigation in areas where as NHBRC we do not carry a mandate to go beyond. And the construction company has been referred as well to SAPS for investigation. So based on the outcome of the investigation, NHBRC has since suspended the officials who have been mentioned in the report to enable more investigation into the matter. And we have since handed over a report into law enforcement agencies. And we take further cognizance that our investigation had only looked at the responsibilities and the role of the NHBRC. We truly appreciate that other organs of state are conducting their own investigations and believe that ours will contribute towards their own investigations as well. But we take key responsibility because we are mandated with ensuring the safety of buildings and is adhered to. So the collapse of this building led to a loss of lives. It tarnished the NHBRC reputation that has been built for over the years. Therefore, we shall not hesitate to act against those who bring and have brought the shame to our institution, including our own. The department had, on a proactive basis, reviewed the applicable processes and the regime that was under operation relative to the NHBRC and found the need, as I indicated earlier, to strengthen the overall regulatory framework, but also to improve on our SAP systems, which is our sub-technological system, which seems to be updated, and the report went at length in terms of explaining what could be done in terms of the improvement of our technological systems with regard to IT. And the department, together with the entity, commenced with the working on drafting of the new bill to address the deficiencies, most of which mirror the findings contained in the report and the accompanying recommendations. So President Cyril Ramaphosa recently signed Housing Consumer Protection Act, Act number 25 of 2024, into law, and it was published in the Government Gazette of the 29th of January this year, 2025. This law, by its very own nature, introduces significant changes to the legislative framework of South Africa's home building industry. It actually even protects the consumer himself or herself. It establishes the enforcement tools and prescribes appropriate penalties and sanctions to deter home non-compliance by home builders. I mean, some of you will ask me now, what would I be doing about the company? I think the Housing Consumer Protection Act must be looked closely to deal with such discrepancies. This includes the provisions addressing the personal liability of members and directors or trustees of home builders. To elaborate to this point, the new law provides emphasis and emphasizes that the professionalization of inspectors, which is Section 69 and Section 70. It also provides that the council must establish and maintain a register of home builders and developers. The purpose is to facilitate, amongst others, risk management in the tendering process in relation to building a home or a multiple-story building, etc., but also to facilitate the assessment of the performance of the home builder or developer in the execution of home building contracts. It also provides or insists on the provision of a performance record of a home builder or developer. Some of you have been having questions that, did we blacklist the company? Do we have the powers to do that? But the Section 23 provides that the council can look into those amenities. Section 24 further deals with the contents of the register of home builders and developers. Amongst others, it includes the grading category of home builder or a developer, as well as limitations placed on the home builder. This is significant in preventing contractors only to do what they are capable of doing and not to do what they are not capable of due to the experience that they might have muscled. So you will be accredited to be doing and deliver a single-story building until you need to pass a test to do a multiple-story building or even bigger, complex buildings. I think this is logical. You can only start by perfecting and building small before you attempt to build big. And there must be a process which gives an assurance that you can, obviously with the monitoring systems in place. So in addition, the home builders and developers will be required to undergo more stringent training and grading before being registered with the NHBRC. And Section 26 provides that a system and requirements will be prescribed for the registration of a home builder and a developer, proving a grade that reflects the level of competence, as I explained. That will be taking into account the financial, technical, construction, and management requirements necessary to undertake a building. Our current work is geared in formulating a criterion that will be fairly and objectively determinable. The Act also provides and prescribed the information system that will link the register of home builders and developers with the register of enrollments, as well as the disciplinary records of home builders and developers. This is one of the areas where we'll have to enhance. Have you built before? What have you built? What has been your record with regard to disciplinary processes that you might have followed or not followed in terms of ensuring that you conclude a building timeously? Section 28 also provides that a failure by a person to register or to retain status as a home builder or developer does not affect that person's liability and obligations in terms of the law. And in the same breath, Section 30 provides for a home builder or a developer who fails to enroll a home and found to have started with construction should immediately stop the construction until given approval by the entity to proceed, upon which he or she has, as a home builder or a contractor, have to satisfy and comply with the technical requirements of NHBRC. The law further provides from greater platform for whistleblowing in Section 62, indicates that any person may now file a complaint in writing in respect of any person or any company who is suspected of not complying with the Act. In the current system, people will ask and say, what if I want to report something that I see that is not going right? What should I do? We should, by law, now have developed that system which allows you to make a record and call and request for an inspection. In addition, the new law also provides for more transgression and penalties on both administrative and substantive non-compliance as outlined in terms of Section 63 and 64 of the Act. The Minister is empowered to prescribe an even stiffer penalty amount threshold that the entity council may impose in instances of administrative non-compliance. And accordingly also, in Section 65, the Minister is allowed to prescribe maximum amount of an administrative fine of up to 1 million. This is a sharp rise as the old act was only amounting to a fine of about 25,000, which in the building industry is not a good deterrent. The Act also provides for the establishment of a statutory compliance and enforcement committee, which currently is not necessarily there. It's individual processes that are followed, but a committee will assist in adjudicating on the objections to both administrative and substantive non-compliances. And this committee has the power to impose fines in relation to substantive non-compliances. We believe that this will aid in the process to expedite for people to be able to build efficiently and cost effectively, but also protect the lives of the workers themselves, but also you as a consumer who a building is being done on your behalf. In addition, the Act also provides that in case there are reasonable grounds to believe that the cause of underlying dispute or claim can be attributed to any action or omission by the developer or organ of state concerned, or the certification body or competent person, the entity council, NHBRC in this instance, may hold the developer or the organ of state or the certification body or that competent person accountable for the rectification or the cost of the rectification for that home. This will bring justice to many who have appointed developers, but at the end of it all, the building doesn't come out to be what passes and you have got no recourse on how you could follow through that. Of great importance is that the new law provides for the appointment of inspectors. This addresses one of the major findings with regard to the joint building report, as the old Act does not elaborate on the type of people that needed to be appointed. Section 69 therefore requires the entity council to approve the qualification of inspectors, that they must be issued or they may be issued with the appointment certificate as well as identification cards. So this implies that the grading of inspectors by the granting of the entity or the granting entity council to have the power to limit the powers of the inspector in accordance with his or her qualification of experience. You obviously can't be having 1 year experience or 2 and then be appointed to manage a complex building. It does show that you need to gain experience gradually so that you are able to avert challenges. Section 70, additionally, as I conclude, prevents inspectors and employees of council to receive gratification or engage in any activity that may undermine the integrity of the council. And further, the law provides the enforcement and enrollment of a penalty clause as indicated in Section 78, which prescribes this one to be a criminal offense and that you may be fined to a fine not exceeding 1.5 million or imprisonment not exceeding 10 years. So we firmly believe that this will serve as a deterrent. We are also aware of other incidences that have taken place in other parts of the country. KZN had one recent incident 3 weeks or so ago. Our team has been instructed to conduct necessary investigation into the structural collapses and that appropriate action equally be undertaken. By law, the law only works when it is enforced. We shall endeavor to do our part. However, on our own, we will not succeed. We need all stakeholders in the built environment to come on board. It is only through cooperation by all that we will effectively enforce the recently assented to Housing Consumer Protection Act. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. A colleague has earlier indicated that will operate within the framework of the established tradition of the Minister giving a speech or release the statement, and then we interact. We also have colleagues on the call We will take colleagues firstly from those who are in the House, and then we'll gravitate towards those who are in the call, to also give them an opportunity to pose questions post the statement as released by the minister or read by the minister. I will open the platform for colleagues to raise their hands, identify themselves in terms of their names and the institutions or media houses which they represent, and ask us questions based on the invitation that we issued on the media advisory about the briefing that has got to do with the report of the collapse of the building in George in May last year. Colleagues, the platform is yours. Criselda?
Good morning, everyone. I hope I am audible. I'm Criselda Lewis from SABC Television News. I've got a number of questions, forgive me, colleagues. Minister, you've indicated there are a number of system failures across several levels, and it's almost a year now that this incident has taken place, and perhaps the families could feel that there's been no justice. Nobody has truly been held accountable for that building collapse. Yes, indeed, you've indicated that the matter has been referred for charges, but no arrest has been made as yet at this particular time. Could we also get some clarification on exactly how many NHBRC officials have been suspended? Because this seems to have been a number of people that were involved in this, including, of course, the suspension of the accounting officer who is the CEO. Perhaps on that as well, how far is the investigation into the CEO? Is he likely to face charges as well? And finally, the council, you did indicate, Minister, could look into blacklisting the company. Who's to say that that company is not performing any duties now? Why has that not happened at this particular stage? That will be all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matunga.
Okay, Mangaban from PNC, Solas mentioned some of the questions I wanted to ask, but just looking at the scope of these irregularities that you've mentioned, Minister, are you perhaps looking at other projects as well that have taken place in the country besides this project, the George project? If you're looking at some of the irregularities that you said had happened in the HBRC, is it concerning for you that there were so many irregularities that were found in it? Perhaps just if you're looking at other projects that also took place in the country at this particular time frame, given that there were so many systemic failures, are there any other projects that you'll be looking into? Are there any other investigations that you're conducting?
Thank you very much. Any further questions before I request the Minister and the Chairperson of the Council and the DG? He has just joined us during the delivering of the statement by the Minister to assist in sponsoring questions. My brother?
It's Ivan from News24. I just wanted clarity on the charges leveled against those implicated officials. I don't know, I might have missed it, but I just wanted clarity on the charges.
Okay. It appears there are no further questions. I will request the Minister and the Chair
Okay, thank you very much. The department also attended to the release of the report with the Portfolio Committee on Friday. And at least there by law, I'm compelled to list individuals. And maybe out of interest, because really these are open discussions, they are recorded. You may want to deal closely with the area of what deals with how many suspensions, because I articulated them very well. But suffice to say that we have got a number of colleagues who, in our system, in the NHBRC as employees who were responsible for some of the steps which were not adhered to, who have already been placed on suspension, including the CEO, who we also, amongst others, is the board then, or the council then, felt that the response in terms of how the council treated the agency and the need and that the council had placed and emphasized in some of the things that need to happen with immediate effect, in terms of ensuring that the site is safeguarded and all that, so that investigation can ensue. And the council wasn't happy about that. The CEO is currently under suspension, and obviously those processes are undergoing, and hence we have an acting CEO in our midst to allow that process to be undertaken. I indicated that the system failures, Sis Griselda, the investigation, because of how laborious it is. I mean, it takes quite a long time, for example, to take the sampling of the cement and everything. You can deal with the underlying, the paper, the desktop and everything, but key to why a building collapses was the foundation firm. You need a very solid, was the material that is used. So you need other agencies to help you to conduct those tests. And it needs to be undertaken at the desired time and their own schedule as well. Justice is taking place. Yes, you may not be having a person who has been arrested, but both internally, suspension has happened and processes are undergoing. We actually not only referred for criminal investigation the company concerned. No, we also referred some of our internal staff members that the police may also have to look into the justification of why some of the clearing inefficiencies, when there are guidelines, were allowed to even occur in the first place. I indicated that at the time of the enrollment of the building, it was before the Act of the Housing Consumer Protection was signed, and the President assented to it only in January 2025. You can't deal with it retrospectively. So the issues of blacklisting and whatever are only provided for in the current situation, but we have undertaken investigations. There's a colleague, I think, from ENCA who asked that, are there any other projects? Yes. The council was then forced to just go zoom into our system broadly, not only in the Western Cape, but everybody. How many complex buildings do we have that we're undertaking? Are the processes done? Because this talks to the inefficiencies in our system, which also suggests that quarterly, which is what is another recommendation of the report, on how do we overhaul our own system, but also putting external measures that forces us to identify our own risk, to improve on our monitoring and evaluation in ensuring that we curb an incident of this nature, because you can't do it because there's a loss of life. It needs to be done so that you don't lose life. And this act allows us to deal with quite a number of elaborative issues that both ourselves as internal in the human settlement family and our developers are supposed to adhere to. So we do not necessarily have investigation as if there is a potential collapse of a building, but no, we then took an inward dive look into what does our system have. Are we happy that all the processes and the measures that should have been taken? A very painful incident to the NHBRC staff is an isolated incident, yes, which has shown gross inefficiencies and overlooking of our systems. But overall, the council has been running a very credible institution, permanent in all provinces, in major cities as well, in some instances duplicate, and following through the processes very well. The cracks, yes, are always there in the system, and that is why we have to ensure that we measure in ensuring that we increase technologically. Your system needs to be advanced already IT-wise with regard to some of the learnings that you would have had and move away from the manual type of things in terms of verifications and maybe a system not issuing a certificate. Because you could imagine now if you are not certified, it means every time, even if it's the same developer, when it puts an application, you have to go manually and count. Whereas if the system automated that if it has given you certificate 1, maybe your terms of reference when you are on certificate 10, you need to be assessed and accredited for another level and all that. This is not that the staff didn't do the work per se, but it's what the improvement of the system could be made to be how the systems are today, particularly when it comes to asset management. The bigger companies, you will know how do they assess and look into their own kitties as well. Colleague from News 24 asked on charges of officials. I think I've touched on it with what Criselda has raised. We do not have officials are charged. I have my report. I may want to check. I think it's around 5, 6. Somewhere there, I'll count the check and help me to count. But as I say, I articulated them and even named them, which is what I may not be able to do today. But in the body that I was appearing, I'm compelled to be able to. I'm getting an assistance there from the CEO that there are 5 who have been charged, who are on suspension already. We do not determine the arrests, says Criselda. We can only refer. Whether SAPS will investigate, if what we call fast or efficient is 2 months, we do not have a say that. We only look into our system and say, hey, we think we want you to come and look at this and this. And we're not limiting you to that. They may be looking at this and that and then discover something else. They don't need our permission not to investigate what is not written there. But there were some underlying messages that the systems were also not just overlooked because of inefficiencies. There were creeping ins of man-made deficiencies and for whatever reason. I mean, it can be that, for example, the municipality is unable to submit its form of its own overseeing of the building because they carry the responsibility. I'm sure some of you might have seen how Tshwane just 2-3 days ago released a statement on one of their buildings on how they've dealt with operation. I wasn't amazed when I saw a statement explaining what I'm about to explain in the release. Is that yes, there are different administration processes with the municipality. So in these instances, the relationship between our officials and our council and the municipality, in both of them overlooking, keep it just to us doesn't look like a coincidence. And we're not expecting that space, but we also has asked SAPS to say, how does a building start without the approval of a municipality? And further, without us overseeing what we're supposed to do. It looks like too convenient to be included. And the person submits and we fault our systems, ourselves only. But there is that relationship, which over time will occur. Because it's one and the same officials who work on approving buildings on the other side. They develop relationships with developers and all that. So we can't pronounce on that. But I'm giving a reason why we thought capable bodies in law enforcement need to go and look into the areas which were not mandated, but all the suggestions were indicated, 4 of them. Otherwise, I emphasize that many of our NHBRC staff work appropriately. They deal with major buildings. You could imagine how many buildings are in the city of eThekwini that goes through NHBRC. And the process is outlined and is adhered to. You have got very few of such, the city of Johannesburg, and many more that they are able to thoroughly follow the processes. Unfortunately, this one also said to us, we need to relook closely.
Thank you very much, Minister. The Chairperson of Council.
Good day to Minister, the DG, the team from HBRC, as well as the most important people for this session, the media, who help us communicate with everyone in the country and outside the country. let me appreciate this opportunity, Minister and Program Director, because it affords us to clarify to everyone involved that the kind of investigation that the NHBRC went into produced the kind of report which is close to be exact, is 285 pages, with more than 300 recommendations, speaking to each of the role players in the value chain, especially those that link up with the NHBRC, to say who is responsible for what and how can the area of responsibility be best managed and improved. So it may be a huge task to in a setting of this nature to say for each this is what we have done. But broadly as council, in as much as we are close to 2 months in office, and the previous council before us had worked tirelessly in terms of responding to some of the areas, we have engaged with the report and we have assigned management to come up with a response plan that seeks to, I don't want to say, let me rather say, but no, it was not supposed to be me, no, it was supposed to be that one, because that also comes into play in these kinds of investigations and report, as well as responses. So that delineation has taken place. Administration will be reporting to us in our council meeting on that delineation. But there were steps that could not wait for that. One of them being to look at that register. I think Minister touched on it but left it hanging. There has been the look into the register to say which are the high risk areas in the register, those projects that could have experienced what this one building had experienced. And already professionals went out to inspect those buildings. And they are about work that had already started and is in progress. But I want to say we haven't waited for all actions, but we immediately responded to say go and inspect. Steps that we are taking is to say, in as far as each individual that would have been a staff member, we wouldn't want to be seen to be throwing bones when we deal with transgressions. We must be thorough, and full accountability must take its course. And therefore, we are appointing a team of HR specialists that are only going to focus on those disciplinary areas, because we wouldn't want to find that somebody got to be scot-free because of an administrative technicality. We want the process to be thorough. My last addition on justice. The fact that we went at length in dealing with this, we would want to see justice being done. It may seem like it's delayed, but the quality of the report that is in front of us is going to help us take the kind of steps and response that will make those families feel justice has been served. So I wouldn't want us to look at only the time, because if one looks at the time it has taken and the quality of the report, for me, as a person who came at the tail end of this, it's justified. And we would want to see justice being done and seen to be done. Well, I think most of the questions have been responded to in terms of who's acting and all that. There has to be somebody acting. I know that the next question from media is that this is Hollywood. If you have to deal with people who were responsible for, that work is still carried on by a competent person. So that's how the council has responded, and we are hard at work to ensure that, as this was a rude awakening call, but a call that I would say, in as much as it has really been so rude to all of us, but we must also commend the NHBRC management to some extent, because their contribution through the Act and looking at the gaps that they are experiencing in their day-to-day work, they realize that the only way to close these gaps in some of the areas is to ensure that legislation is enacted. That, for me, kind of balances the anger that one would have experienced, and as well as the foresight that one has in terms of where we would want to see the organization going. So that balance is necessary, but using this as that rude awakening call, I think I'm covered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Minister, Chairperson in DG, it's from, I'll just read it for sake of recording. I don't want to be accused of prejudice. It's from the Engineering News. It's asked by Darren Parker. He's asking whether will the officials involved in misrepresentation and negligence or outright fraud using other officials' names to issue accreditation, etc., be held criminally liable for the deaths occurred, or will they only be dealt with internally, that is, fired or suspended, etc.? That is the question, unless otherwise the Minister and the Chair, they still want to further elaborate it, but I think it was dealt with adequately. Colleagues, if there are no any further questions, I want to profoundly thank each and every one of you for attending this media briefing and interact. And if there are no questions, colleagues, I want to thank you, and thank you very much for embracing this media briefing. It's official.